I'm sure he truly meant that as a compliment. Did you guys hear it the same way?
So, I've got a pretty decent whiskey collection. Now, I'm not saying it's as big as some folks here in Kentucky, but I've got a few bottles worth showing off. Before I go adding more to the shelf, I need to finish off some of the ones I already have. You know, my friend and Bourbon Hall of Famer, Freddie Johnson, always says bourbon is more than just a drink. It's about the stories we create while sharing it with others. Each episode of Last Pour is my way of honoring that idea by sharing the stories behind the bottles as I enjoy their very last pour. Today's guest of honor is a bottle that I have discovered in, the past 6 months. And it is becoming one of my favorite everyday drinkers not because it's easily available, but because the price point, and if and when you can find it, get a bottle. Today's guest of honor is Devil Road Whiskey. And this mug right here is a monster.
I'm sure he truly meant that as a compliment. Did you guys hear it the same way?
And what I mean by that is it is a hodgepodge of stuff. It is a whiskey, it's not a bourbon. Let's go ahead and give this thing a pour. Last pour. I do hate to see this thing go, honestly, but I know where to get them, and I will be going to get another bottle soon. Yeah. The smell on this thing, it is a double oak, but I get a lot of like burnt baking nut, not scorched, not in a bad way, but just super deep baking spices. Some butterscotch maybe. Oh man. The taste on this though, as soon as you taste it, I always make fun of people for saying things like this, but I think of like creme brulee and it's like a creamy sweetness. So it's definitely well-rounded and very complex. Now let's talk about this for a minute. Man, how I found out about this is I have some buddies who work for a distillery in Lexington called Bespoken. And if you know anything about Bespoken, they are kind of shaking things up in the industry because they do a little bit of things differently with their finishes. And so what this isn't their product, but they finish it. And so I bought a couple bottles from them, from their distillery. And if I'm not mistaken, you can still buy bottles at their distillery. I'm not sure where else you can get it. I haven't seen it out in the wild yet. But, and the price point on this, the reason I say it's a good everyday drinker, the price point on this is like $39. And it is equivalent to a double oak. And what I mean by that is Bespoken does this thing with their finishing. Finishing it means it might take them a couple months or a couple weeks to get a finish in there that traditionally it would take you maybe several months or a year or 2 years to get. So, but it adds so much complexity. And so when I was reading up on this, I wanted to know who made it and who started this whiskey and handed it over to them to finish it. And from what I understand about this whiskey, the reason I called it a monster at the beginning is it is a mix of around 2-year-old bourbon, but it's mixed with 7-year-old corn whiskey. So there already, without doing anything to the finish, you're gonna have a sweeter whiskey because that corn whiskey aged 7 years is gonna bring some sweetness to it. But then they turn it over to my friends at Bespoken, and then they add that extra oomph to the end of it by finishing it with American and French oak staves. Now, I don't know how much, I don't know the process, I'm not privy to that information, but I will say You know, one of my favorite double oaks is Woodford Double Oak. They have a great, you know, double oak and double oak, all that kind of stuff. But this, for the price point, is pretty phenomenal, and it is pretty complex. One of the reasons this bottle is pretty special to me is, you know, in the industry and in doing what I do when I film and go out and meet people. You know, I met the guys over at Bespoken probably a year ago, a little over a year ago, and we've developed a pretty good friendship. Jared and Jordan over there, they're scientists, and in this industry, you know, you're going to have one of a couple of different things. You're going to have, you know, and I'm saying this word master distiller, and what I mean is I really truly just mean the person responsible for spitting out the brands, right? But you're going to have the artsy people that kind of just want to create something out of the box. You're going to have the more traditional people who really just want a type of bourbon or a type of whiskey that kind of falls in a specific parameter that all other whiskey or bourbon falls into. And then you got these guys they're like mad scientists, honestly. I'll put some B-roll up of like some, you know, their lab and this kind of the stuff that they've done, because I've done a video for them, you know, in the past, so I'm privy to that kind of information. But they get in there and they can scientifically show you why things taste the way they taste or do the things they do. You know, a traditional distiller goes in there, makes his product, puts it in a barrel, puts it in a rick house. 4 years later, hopes and prays that when they pull it out and taste it, it's, you know, it can bear the stamp of approval. And I get it. That's the process, and that's the process that I love, and that's the process that I support. But these guys can go in and say, we want specifically this flavor. We want to specifically bring out this flavor in a whiskey. Here's kind of how we can do that. And I appreciate that as well. A couple weeks ago, I did a last pour of a whiskey, and I said it's got this big elephant in the room. The elephant is that, you know, a lot of you guys won't drink whiskey or drink bourbon that doesn't come from a specific distillery, or won't drink one that's not $300 or whatever the issue is. The elephant in the room here is a lot of you won't try stuff like this because of the process, but I just want to say you really are doing yourself a disservice. If you are a true bourbon fan or you're a true whiskey fan and you want to at least even try something like this because it doesn't fit in the context of like traditional bourbon, and one of the illustrations that they use at Bespoken that I really do like and appreciate is they say it's like getting from point A to B. A traditional distillery, like your heritage brands, that's the country road. So it's going to wind and it's going to go back and forth. It's going to go up and down. It's going to take you twice as long to get there. But it's a beautiful path, and it's a path that we all probably need to take more. And then they say what they are is kind of like the interstate. They're going to get you from the same point to the same end point. They're just going to take the interstate and go the expressway. Now, is it as pretty? No, it's not. But it gets you there. And I don't know. I like what they do. I like what they produce. They're buddies of mine. And this Devil Road is what it's called, Devil Road. Like I said, it's not their brand, so it's not like I'm trying to promote them, but what they do to it helps it go from a C+ whiskey to like an A+ whiskey in my book. So here is to my buddies at Bespoken. Here's to doing things a little bit different way. Here's to the scientific art in whiskey. Here's to finishes. Here's to adding complexity. And here's to you. Cheers. That's it for Last Pour. Whether it's your first favorite or your latest discovery, make sure you enjoy it while it lasts. Until next time.